Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Bayonetta 2 walkthrough. It is time for even more extras. This time, it is the beginning of our infinite climax run. Yes, I am indeed going to try and do this. Oh dear God. So, how are we tackling this? Well, we are making use of Rosa, who we unlocked as an unlockable character at the end of third climax, used in tag climax, and we're going to use her here because she's an incredibly useful tool for completing infinite climax, although it does lead to a bit of danger. Now, the way that this entire thing is going to work is I am going to show you every single verse that I completed in infinite climax. So basically you get to see a speed run of all of the verses that you would have to complete in order to beat infinite climax. There is one verse which I rather cannily managed to skip, which I'm very proud of, which I will show how to skip. And basically I skipped any verse that was not required, which was an absolute godsend because infinite climax does not mess about. And I mean, seriously, it does not mess about. It wants you dead. Now, the reason that we are playing as Rosa for this is because of her increased attack power. So basically, just in general, her punches and kicks cause more damage. But also, when you hold the punch or kick buttons, her shotgun shots are incredibly powerful and work brilliantly to stun enemies and just generally be amazing. The downside is the decreased defense, so you're only going to be able to take a couple of hits with Rosa before you get obliterated, which is the thing that's frustrating on Infinite Climax, and technically I probably would have had an easier time had I played as Bayonetta. But having said that, I rather wanted to play as Rosa for this because she's awesome and incredibly badass. And also I wanted to show off all of Rosa's versions of the climax attacks, because they are slightly different. Now, the main kind of differences between all of the difficulty modes is first climax is you don't take a lot of damage, enemies die a hell of a lot quicker, and you're given lots more kind of health items along the way, and enemies just aren't that aggressive. You also have access to the Immortal Marionette, which I believe is automatically equipped, which basically plays the game for you, essentially. So you end up with just mashing buttons and it will perform combos for you, which is incredibly cool, but I would recommend you play with it off because otherwise you are never going to be able to play the game on anything other than First Climax. I mean, it is available. Once you beat First Climax, the accessory does become available to purchase, but really, it's not worth it. Then you have Second and Third Climax, which are kind of your more standard ones, where the only kind of increase is just a little bit more difficult as you go into Third. The main thing with Infinite Climax is that everything is ridiculously unforgiving. So enemies are smarter, faster, stronger, there's more enemies than usual, and there are different enemies. So as you saw in that fight there, we're in the prologue, and as well as fighting the acceptance and accolades, so we've got, I mean, this particular accolade here turning up, we also had Bane on the jet plane. And this is going to continue throughout Infinite Climax. You will have to put up with a lot more difficult enemies as you go through. So, as I said, sort of, even though, like, Resentment and Sloth don't appear too much in Second and Third Climax, you'll be coming across them plenty more in this particular difficulty mode. The other difference is that the Muspelheim challenges are much less forgiving in their restrictions. So, if you want one of the biggest challenges in the game, this is your kind of thing to try and complete. Because Let me tell you. Oh, good grief. I was just freaking out trying to complete this. Because, I mean, the thing is that while I wasn't playing particularly well... Oh, you see, one hit, that is how much it took off my health bar. Yes, this game is evil when you're playing as Rosa on this particular difficulty. But even if you weren't playing as Rosa, you'd still be taking a lot more damage than you would do otherwise. However, having kind of said that, I mean, as I was saying with the whole difficult... Well, the general method of my playing, like, second Climax I wanted to try and do incredibly well and get to Platinum straight through, and then first and third Climax I wasn't particularly caring about anything, it was just like, just get through it. What happens with Infinite Climax is it's not even a case of playing well if I could. This stuff's just hard, so it's just a challenge to survive and even complete the damn thing, let alone start to even bother about trying to get the highest rankings. Because obviously if you won like the Platinum Award and the Pure Platinum, well, for the Pure Platinum you can't get hit ever. For the Platinum you can get hit, but dying will really seriously scupper your chances. And until I played through Infinite Climax, I had never gotten the Stone Award before in the entirety of my experience of Bayonetta 2. Ever. Like, that doesn't kind of happen. Because, I mean, first playthrough of Bayonetta 1, I got quite a few stones because I sucked at the game. But got quite a few on this run. Quite a lot of few. You'll see how many later down the line. Thankfully, having said that, I think the most deaths I ever had on a chapter was 9. And I think that was on the depths. So, chapter 10, aka what is arguably the longest gameplay chapter in the game, especially one that you can't really skip through too much of what they have to pit you against. Now, the Enochian that Rosa used to summon Gamora is Arzulg, which is apparently the name of an evil spirit, or the evil spirit. Not quite sure, but either way, I will say that pretty much the majority of what Rosa says is almost identical to what Bayonetta uses, though there are some kind of differences. Not many, but some. And yes, we get a wonderful fight against Gamora, and what I find absolutely baffling, I mean, I'm kind of going to cheese him very, very, very hard, but I'm actually going to do ridiculously remarkably well on Gamora, which makes my run on second Climax just look absolutely pathetic. I mean, basically this is the power of Rosa, so before we even get to the top of the skyscraper, we have obliterated the majority of Gamora's health bar. Like, that's just bonkers. And if you're playing this on an easier difficulty, you'd be down even quicker. But there we go. Gamora has been defeated in record time. So, you see, sometimes I can play well. It's just pick my moments. Now Rosa's thing for Labalas is identical to Bayonetta's, it's Argedco, which is wonderful. And then we get to see my rank.
This is simply the benefit of training.
I got a pure platinum on Gamora on Infinite Climax. Oh yes! I mean, admittedly I did completely cheese him with the Umbran armor, but I don't care! I didn't use like any lollipops or anything, so that's like... that's a victory in my book. Now, another thing that I do really like about Bayonetta 2, this is going tangents again, it's going to happen, I apologise, but it is kind of like, how many of the verses you can skip? Like, it's a very speedrun friendly game, or at least it's a very replay friendly game, so if you don't care about your rank, then it's very ridiculously easy to just merrily skip through all of the chapters very quickly.
I'm afraid I don't have time to dance too long. A friend is waiting for
Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure that while this entire run involved quite a lot of deaths, it only took me a couple of hours to complete. Also, Valiant here is an absolute monster. Like, I completely forget how many times I died against this absolute git. It's because of kind of just the difficulty of reading him, and because he's got that massive bloody sword and gets in the way. Hate him. And oh god, this was so close. All I can say is thank God for Umbran armor, because it saved my bacon. Now, something rather odd about Rosa, I think it's more they didn't have time to make another model, but so her pact is with a demon called Madame Kefri, who you can see sort of in her kind of wicked weave, punches and kicks and stuff, which is great, and the design for her is wonderful. I really, really, really like the design from Madame Kefri that you can see in the artwork. But for some reason, even though Rosa uses Madame Kefri in her wicked weaves, whenever she needs a massive summon, she ends up summoning Madama Butterfly. So, I mean, as I said, I think that basically the main reason for that being the case is that they didn't have time to make another model, especially considering how complex the design for Madame Kefri is. And also she's a lot thinner than both Madama Butterfly and Madama Styx. And the wing pattern is very, very different. They do have the shadow for Madama Kefri. I thought it was Madame Kefri. Oh well. See, it's slightly disappointing that you don't get that, but then again, having said that, we never got to see the full form of Madama Styx or Madama Butterfly in the original game. And it's only in this game where they've finally been given form. Having said that, if a Bayonetta 3 happens, as much as I would love to see a kind of full body rendering of Madame Kefri. I think it's time that Bayonetta moves away from Rosa and Boulder and just goes for something new. Because I think that would kind of provide an opportunity that would be very, very useful. Because we've had kind of the beginning and the end, and obviously all of the time travel in between, so the whole thing with what happened 500 years ago is done now. It's played out. Also, yes, I died during this fight. And yes, because of the whole way it saves, I kind of have to redo this bit. Yeah, at this point it's like I didn't care about death, it was just, I'm just getting through this, whatever. Thankfully the game is kind enough to provide reasonably frequent kind of checkpoints. It's nowhere near as kind as the wonderful 101, because that thing literally just put you back where you finished. Well, put you back where you died immediately. And your opponent had exactly the same health as when you kind of died, which was incredibly forgiving. This is a bit harsher, but generally there's enough kind of checkpoints to keep you going. Now, returning quickly back to the narrative stuff, as I said, sort of the witch hunts and everything associated with them is kind of over. Like, Bayonetta regained her memories, so she knows what Jeanne did. Now, having completed this game, we know kind of what caused Boulder to go crazy and start the witch hunts. We know what happened to Rosa, so kind of that whole arc is done. And obviously Aesir is defeated, so we're all good. So if, and I really do hope that it does happen, if a Bayonetta 3 happens, I would seriously like them to try and do a story with something different, because, I mean, in the world of Bayonetta, there's so many crazy people that undoubtedly there are going to be enemies to defeat. Heck, we could even go back into hell, and that'd be fine by me. Because it'd be quite cool to take on Satan. Like that would be quite the badass fight. And to be perfectly honest, when we were told that in this game we were going to be going into hell to save Jeanne, I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only person who thought that perhaps the final boss of the game was going to be Queen Sheba. Because I think the thought process was that you were going to go into hell and saving Jeanne was going to be the kind of only focus of the game. So by the time you got to the end, that would be when you would save Jeanne. And to save Jeanne you would have to take down like Queen Sheba, because Queen Sheba is like one of the biggest bloody things in the entirety of the Bayonetta universe. Obviously we didn't quite get that, and while I'm fine with that, I think it would be a nifty kind of idea to play with for if a sequel happened. Obviously it would mean returning to hell, but then again, so many different places in hell that you could go to that I'm sure they could come up with something. Now, with this fight, to be perfectly honest, it's only really okay with Bayonetta or Jeanne, mostly Bayonetta, because if you have Kafka, then you can hit this damn glamour when he's kind of flying ahead of you. Something which is nigh on impossible when you are kind of just shooting at him, which speeds up the process considerably. What's really frustrating is that, you know, this is basically just a lot of waiting otherwise. A ridiculous amount of waiting, and waiting's not fun. Like, riding a water tornado is glorious, but just waiting to get any damage in to be able to move on to the next sequence, because obviously once you get to the flying sequence, that's just absolutely outstanding. But it takes so long to get there. And it's the same with this entire section. It just takes too long because it's really annoying to try and get damage in, which just sucks, really. Thankfully, the ability to actually go into witch time consistently is incredibly helpful, and why I definitely recommend just don't play as Jeanne. Unless you know what you're doing or just want a challenge, because I mean, I guess that's primarily what she's there for. Anyway. I guess now is a reasonable time to return to the wonderful thing that is the Platinum Games blog, because there's some great stuff to kind of discuss from it. Because as I said, sort of what Platinum love to do is provide a lot of details in how they make their games. So, for example, one of the things that they did during Bayonetta 2 was they developed a sort of automated bug checker. Because obviously you have to do kind of Q&A testing to try and find things to make sure that the game works perfectly. But that's really kind of not always the easiest thing to do, because you have to pay people to test it. And also, the developers need to kind of, and programmers need to know things as quickly as possible so that they can actually sort it. So there are kind of multiple types of bugs. So you have freeze bugs, which stops responding to the game stops responding to controller input, freezes, and the only available option to sort anything out is to shut down the console. And obviously they are very serious, even in mid-development, so you need to take care of them. There's also collision bugs, so it's like falling through invisible holes in the ground, getting pushed by an enemy into some area that you're not allowed to go to, or shouldn't exist, stuck inside buildings and stuff. So there's kind of multiple ways of obviously telling how these bugs occur. So full playthrough from start to finish, just to see if you can play it without freezing the game, playing the game for extended periods of time, trying to go back after doing something and seeing what happens, trying to do something different from the intended design, etc, etc. Now, what Marita, who's one of the programmers who wrote this particular blog post, believes is that if a machine can do something, let a machine do it. And machines can actually bug check. So basically what they did is they developed a kind of program in which they could determine a set of actions for Bayonetta to perform, and therefore make the game play itself over and over and over again. There's also kind of the whole thing of extended periods of time, because obviously people need to sleep, eat, take breaks, and the machine can play for as long as you want it to, and it'll never have to break. And there's also the whole thing of bugs that have a very low chance of reoccurring, so like 1 in 50 chance. So they kind of developed the autoplay tool. I would assume it's in part based on the kind of easy automatic in Mortal Marionette thing that they have got in the game, and also I believe the touch controls partially, and kind of they went from there. So Marita first started thinking about developing it around the time Bayonetta ended, so with Bayonetta 2 got to try it out. And it managed to beat Bayonetta 2 40 times in a row. Probably could have gone further than that, but by the time it's played that long, kind of the team were ready to add fixes and update on the data. So they could turn it off once, refresh, and then start it up again. And what's really cool is they kind of have footage of the thing at work. So kind of they had different points for Bayonetta to go and kind of moved her through, which is just awesome. Like, it's a really simple setup, but it works, and it managed to give them so much kind of ease of checking stuff, and just makes the bug testing process so much easier. To be perfectly honest, they should probably kind of try and pass that kind of program on to other companies, because I'm sure it'll save a hell of a lot of people from ending up with ridiculously buggy games. I mean, like, Ubisoft and stuff could definitely use it, as could Sega. And, I mean, to be honest, that's one of the reasons why I think, like, Platinum is so awesome, because they have people in their company who like to think about this stuff, who like to think about ways of making their job easier for themselves, so that they can spend more time focusing on the stuff that's actually important. Because bug checking is obviously a time sink. And I mean, sort of, a lot of what I've been recording here has been time sync, like Tag Climax. It's just something that you just pour a ridiculous amount of time into for maybe not necessarily a huge amount of reward. So, anything to make the job easier does wonders. And now we get this bastard. So, on Infinite Climax, Boulder gets ridiculous. So, he dodges a ridiculous amount. Getting any sort of chip damage from him from just shooting is going to be minimal. He doesn't stagger from Umbran Climax, and essentially you are going to need to go into Witch Time if you want to stand a chance at surviving. What's really stupid of me, though, is that I used a ridiculous number of lollipops during this particular verse, which put me at a distinct disadvantage for later on in the mode, difficulty mode, because then I was quite a few lollipops down and rather struggled. Which I suppose is why, like, Chapter 10 ends up taking me, like, 9 deaths to complete. Although what's really bizarre is that I seem to have found that shooting whilst dodging actually does work to enact chip damage on Boulder, which I don't get quite how it works, but it does, so it's useful. Also, what's really frustrating is that because he's so small, the Umbran armor won't necessarily manage to damage him, which absolutely sucks. But as I've pretty much said all along, this fight with Boulder and the second fight with Boulder are, I would argue, the hardest fights in the game. Because his final fight isn't that bad in Infinite Climax, all things considered. At least I don't remember dying that many times. I had quite a few, but not that many. But I did so much worse on this fight and the one in Chapter 7. And they were far worse than when I even fought a Seer, or Prophet, or Lopter. Which is just ridiculous. I don't quite get how that works. The rival is harder than the guy who was the primary antagonist. God knows. But, oh, something that miffed me off so bad is that this whole thing all went rather well. Initially. Like, I fought my way through this phase, got to the kind of punch out bit with Temper Archer and Madama Butterfly, and that was going okay as well, and then he clobbered me and killed me, and then I had to do this entire phase all over again. They couldn't just put a, you know, checkpoint here. Would have been nice, because this guy will hurt so much. So ridiculously much. But either way, part 1 of Infinite Climax is complete. Yes! 2 more parts to go. Let's do this.